approved and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. The government shutdown continues, day 2. And I don't see Republicans at all concerned about letting up on this. Did the Democrats make a big mistake? Trump may use the shutdown to reshape the federal government, and he has the power to do so. It's a little-known law that during a shutdown allows the White House and the Office of Management and Budget to have a lot more power over shaping the federal government. It's called the Anti Deficiency Act, federal law that guides the government through the shutdowns. Federal agencies are not permitted to spend funds the Government Accountability Office outlines, except for a limited set of missions, such as performing constitutional duties. The executive branch is charged with interpreting what these exceptions mean. And Donald Trump going, nice bloated federal bureaucracy we have there. Maybe time to trim it down a bit. Looking at possibly 100,000 federal jobs. So, did the Democrats make a mistake in doing this and giving the president the power to reshape the federal executive branch? We'll get to your phone calls and texts on this. And I especially would love to hear from you. If you are a federal employee, if this shutdown has affected you, please give us a call. The phone number is 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Now is time for news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. Thursday, 50 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 82 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, the party of chaos, the Democratic Party, causing this ridiculous shutdown. We enter day 2 and could last until at least tomorrow, with some senators out for Yom Kippur.
You already see, I think, the Democrats cracking a little bit because they realize it's such a preposterous position to say, we're going to shut down TSA, we're going to not pay our troops because you guys won't give us benefits for illegal aliens. It's crazy, and I don't think it's a tenable political situation for them to be in.
VP JD Rick Scott from Florida says, you know what, all these politicians, including him, all of us, hey, we shouldn't get paid during shutdowns. Great idea.
I'm a business guy. I always pass budgets. And by the way, if you didn't do your job in business, you didn't get paid. You don't show up and do your job, you don't get paid. Why are we getting paid? We shouldn't get paid if we don't do our job. We need to figure out how to work together to get our budgets done. It's as simple as that.
So you're going to offer legislation to not get paid during shutdowns?
Absolutely. I already have a bill. We've got a bill that we don't get paid during the shutdown. Ron Johnson's got a bill that will never have shutdowns.
I love it. The shutdown isn't expected to impact Colorado in the short term, but state-run programs could feel the effects if it goes beyond a couple of weeks. Colorado is heavily reliant on federal funding. The state is expected around $14 billion in this year's budget. Over 41,000 people in Colorado are federally employed. The Pentagon plans to make thousands of employees take polygraph tests and sign non-disclosure agreements in an an effort to stop information leaks. It's the only way they can do it. The Washington Post says all workers in the Office of Defense Secretary and the Joint Staff will be required to sign NDA and be subject to random polygraph tests.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Premier, fastball, mayday.
No one is hurt after a small plane made a crash landing in the Springs Wednesday. Police say the Piper PA-28 struck a couple of power poles but came down without causing serious damage on Powers Boulevard near Barnes Road. Thank God. The Israeli Navy has intercepted a flotilla of humanitarian aid that was headed for Gaza. The convoy's organizers confirmed today that 20 boats were intercepted off the coast of Gaza and about 200 people were detained, including climate activist Greta Thunberg, I don't know her last name. I always forget. I hear it like 18 different ways. At least 4 people are injured after an attack outside of a synagogue in Manchester, England, this morning in the on the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur, and the suspect was seen driving a vehicle toward a crowd before going on the attack. He failed to gain entry into the synagogue and was shot by armed officers at the scene. All right, Stephen Miller time. Fired up again in Memphis last night.
To the Memphis. You cannot even imagine. This isn't just a task force. This is a all of government unlimited support operation. ATF, DEA, FBI, ICE, Department of War, every resource we have. And they're not going to be sitting behind a desk at a keyboard. We are sending in real cops with guns and badges to go out with you on the street every single night making arrests.
And try to clean up Memphis. Love it. The FBI is cutting ties with the ADL, with Director Kash Patel accusing the Jewish advocacy group of spying on Americans. Patel also claimed former FBI Chief James Comey had close ties with the ADL. The ADL responded that it respects the FBI and remains committed to protecting the Jewish people, even as it faces criticism from Republicans over labeling Turning Point USA in its extremism glossary. Rockies GM Bill Schmidt announced his resignation on Wednesday. Rockies finished once again with one of the worst seasons in Major League Baseball history at 43-119. Niners and Rams tonight. Thursday night football. Football continues. You get Tuesday and Wednesday off, and then we're back at it. 2 3-1 teams. 49 in Parker, 48 in Arvada, 50 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your KNUS forecast for the Denver metro area calls for late summer rather than early fall-like weather conditions today into Friday, as we're going to be looking at temperatures a good 10 to 12 degrees above average, mid and upper 80s for highs. Sunny, dry conditions, mid-50s tonight, 70 Saturday, 60 Sunday, weekend showers. Weather is a service of L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call L&L Heating and Air Conditioning at 720-851-1691. Visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. That's bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. I'm meteorologist Mark Huer in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. All right, Mr. Thorpe. You know, conservatives in their worldview go, we want a limited federal government, right? What should the role of the federal government be? Well, basically, national defense, strong borders, I guess a consistent currency among all the states, and the ability to trade. Relatively simple role of the federal government. And we find ourselves in a position where the government shutdown makes anyone who's non-essential furloughed. And while we would regret that the essential employees don't get their pay right away, they'll eventually get it back pay. That's something that's terrible. Consequence of this. We are actually getting a government at this size that we would like. And in fact, there is a law called the Anti Deficiency Act that guides the government through shutdowns. Federal agencies are not permitted to spend funds. The Government Accountability Office, which is managed by the Trump administration, gets to outline where the money goes for a limited set of missions, such as performing constitutional duties. And in light of this, Russell Vought and the Trump administration are going, wow, look at all this power we have now as a result of the shutdown. Trump saying that he did not want the shutdown to unfold, but that a, quote, lot of good could come from it, unquote, in order to weed out government overspending, noting we're going to be laying off a lot of people that are going to be affected by this. Some saying up to 100,000. Trump, a lot of good can come from shutdowns. Do you believe the Democrats find themselves in a position of going, well, this may not have been the best thing to do at this point. Time to renegotiate. Doesn't seem like the Republicans are all that concerned about this shutdown. Your thoughts, Mr. Thorpe?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. First, I don't think that Vought is interpreting the Anti Deficiency Act properly. I think he is interpreting it through a lens of what I can do to use it to get things that I want done. I think he's missing an important component of that, and we'll outline that in a second. The other part is I don't think that either side has necessarily the strongest messaging at this point. I also think that both sides are particularly atrocious at pointing out the weakness of their opponent. What I mean by that is some of the narrative on both sides I don't think is landing or resonant necessarily with voters. I think there's better messaging. The Democrats, and I've talked about it before, in my opinion, the strongest message for the Democrats, especially talking about the idea of the Trump administration firing people, is they're looking at taking health care away from some poor people. And in order to do that, they want to fire some working class people. That's a great message. The idea of firing working class people because you want to take health care away from people that are working class and poor. That works really well. I don't think the Democrats are clever enough by half to figure that one out. I don't think so. And going back to the Anti Deficiency Act, what I'm reading inside of it is that it prevents initiating any new obligations as far as funding or spend. That's a problem when you start to fire people, because when you fire people, you've created new obligations for spend, and that would be compensation, that would be reorganization spend, and that also would be legal liability. Just the compensation of having to let them go, as far as severance and everything else, would be significant. Those would be new allocations that wouldn't be covered from my interpretation of the Anti Deficiency Act. I think that would be a hiccup. Now, do I think the Trump administration will try to push through that and then let it go inside of the courts? Yes.
Yep.
But here's the problem. As soon as they're in court, that proves that it's a new spend, because they're having to spend money to defend what they are doing. The RFI, the reduction in force, has some real hard guidelines about where, when, why, and how you can do that. Everything that I'm seeing under the RIF guidelines federally, it's not allowed under the Anti Deficiency Act, specifically because of the new obligations of money that would incur. that would prevent it. And again, as soon as they file suit and take them to court over it, they're initiating new money. So it would be a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point if the court finds that argument persuasive. But that's why I don't think this is really as good. The other part is I'm not certain that it is a good look for the Republicans to hold federal workers as political hostages. And what I mean by that is, you better open up the government or we're going to fire all these people. You wouldn't want us to fire all these people, would you? You better help us reopen the government or all these people are going to get it. I'm not certain that's going to be a winning message long term. It may work 48 hours, 72 hours as far as a cycle, but holding those people hostage in that way and threatening to fire them over this, I'm not certain that's going to play out long term like they think it is.
Text messages hot on this one. Shutdown means government workers are okay to go on extended vacation, and rest assured your past wages are waiting for you.
I got a question for the texter,
Yes.
though. I want to know from the texter, how many paychecks can you miss and still be okay in your family, in your budget? How many paychecks can go missing? If your employer today came and said, hey, we've had a problem with funding or payroll, or you pick whatever you want, and they said your paycheck's going to be delayed by 1 cycle, 2 cycles, 3 cycles, how many paychecks can you miss before your family's in danger? This idea that these federal workers are not facing that same situation. There are some that are getting the big fat dollar bills, but those people are still there most of the time. So we're talking about people that are rank and file in most cases. And that's the question I have for the texter. How many paychecks can you miss until your family finances start going sideways? Take that into consideration before you start telling the government workers they're all taking a cushy vacation, because their bills still come. If you have a mortgage payment in the middle of the month and that check doesn't arrive in the next week, and if you're at a point where all the other stuff that you have as far as bills, you've got to make a choice now. I'm paying my mortgage, or I'm going to be able to afford medication, or I'm going to be able to feed, or I'm going to be able to pay child care. What are you going to do? It's a question.
Well, absolutely, Bill. You are correct in laying out the argument that real lives are going to be affected by this. I would caution the belief that the general public really embraces what federal employees are both doing and who they are. And I raised the suspicion because there's reports out there from organizations like the American First Policy Institute that say 95% of career federal employees who have emailed about politics at work express liberal views. I think a lot of people look at federal employees and go, they're probably pretty progressive people. They're probably Democrats. And granted, we don't want to see people go without pay, all that. This kind of general notion of these are hardworking American people that are being harmed by a big bad Donald Trump, that type of thing. I think a lot of people go, yeah, y'all are pretty dang progressive. A lot of the work that federal employees do is not necessarily super critical to the running of this nation. I would, if you're working for the EPA, for instance, versus working for border security or the military or that type of thing. So I think a lot of people look at the federal government and go, it's bloated. They're made up of a lot of progressive Democrats who work for the government. They get really nice jobs. What they do is not absolutely essential. We're a country that's $37 trillion in debt. I just want to hang my hat on people being super sympathetic. That's all I'm saying.
Well, the issue being this is I understand the bromide, but do we really think, that all of these jobs are political and partisan? And that's the thing that I find interesting is that for whatever reason, we are telling the federal workers they can't be in politics. They can't have a political opinion. Now, can you have someone, is there someone in your workplace that does the job and has a different political opinion than you? Yes. Does that impact their ability to do their job? No. Does it impact how they execute their job? No. Yet in this sphere of federal government, we decide that politics is going to be the centerboard that will guide everybody's sailboat across the lake. And I disagree. I don't see a lot of these jobs, especially the rank and file, being partisan. My father-in-law worked for the federal government for decades, and his job wasn't partisan at all. And his politics didn't come into his job in any way, shape, or form, but he would be someone that would be furloughed in these type of situations, and he was. And his job was to travel from state to state and look at nursing care facilities to make sure they are providing the care that is outlined by the federal government in order to receive the subsidies. And I'm going to tell you, there are people out there that would be very, very glad that he showed up because of the crap that was going on at those nursing homes. That was oversight that was absolutely needed. There were some that were absolutely 5 stars, and there were some that were crap holes, and they needed this type of oversight and regulation. Now, he would be determined to be not essential at this point, and maybe he's part of that government bureaucracy you don't like. But understand on the other end, you then don't have oversight and regulation of nursing homes. And that's a vulnerable population. He would be considered in that. And he wasn't getting rich. He wasn't pulling in a huge salary, and missing a couple of paychecks hurts the family. He's the type of worker. So I understand the idea, but we have to decide these are either humans or they're this big amorphous blob that we hate the government. And by deciding that because they're mostly Democrats, I then would be curious to say, oh, well, then you're okay if we fire the Democrats based on politics. Interesting.
No,
Interesting
I'm just
idea.
saying this bromide, as you put it, that they're just innocent people working hard out there. Big bad Trump has now taken their job away. This, like, if you look at Washington, D.C. and how it went for Kamala Harris, it is overwhelmingly progressive. The federal workforce, overwhelmingly progressive. It's like a jobs program for Democrats. And I'm just saying, well, oh, gosh.
Didn't you just prove my point? That it's okay if we fire the Democrats and the progressives?
No, I'm not saying.
No, but wait, hang on a second. But you just said the people in D.C. overwhelmingly progressive. People in the government overwhelmingly progressive.
Yes.
And if they don't get paychecks or jobs,
no,
that's exactly what I said.
What I'm doing is
it's okay to fire the Democrats.
That there's this little Johnny out there in Indiana who's lost his job because of big bad Trump. No, I don't think that's an accurate description of the actual federal workforce.
I don't think the whole federal workforce is actively political. I don't think those jobs are actively political. So the idea that these are all progressives, but again, you're okay with firing the progressives. So it's okay to fire somebody because of politics. Because we dislike their politics in government, we can fire them. Okay, let's see how that sells. Let's see how that works.
All right, let's go to the phone lines. Joan, Lakewood. Good morning, Joan. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Good morning. Happy Yom Kippur. I have a little tale to tell about the shutdown and how I think it's affecting our national parks.
Sorry about that. I did not mean to hit that.
Sorry, Joan.
Sorry,
Please
Joan.
continue.
I did not. I totally bumped that with my hand. I'm so sorry. I haven't done that in weeks. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead,
sorry.
please.
Go ahead.
I think it's affecting our national parks because I have a friend who was on his RV and at the Grand Canyon, and he had a reservation to spend the night on the 1st, and he didn't know whether he was going to be able to stay or not because they were going to close the park. Well, the employees closed it all down, but they left all the campgrounds and stuff. So he got his campground, he got to stay, and the fee was waived. And so I think one of the things that has happened with our country is how our national parks have been monetarized. You have a fee to make a reservation, you have a fee to enter, you have a fee to camp, and all of those fees, I think, are not happening. It should affect the federal parks budget if it goes on too long.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Yeah, the AP reporting that national parks generally remaining open during the shutdown because who's going to be there to tell them not to come in?
I think the other part of that that's really sad is that all the consignments the donkey mules that go into the canyon and stuff, that's not run by the government. That's all run by private consignments. And those people are shut down as well.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Now, Joan, who do you think is going to eventually blink on this? What I'm seeing from Republicans like Donald Trump and others is they find this to be quite the opportunity, in fact, to run their agenda. And there may be 100,000 federal employees that don't have jobs as a result of this. So they don't seem all that concerned about backing away. And plus, now they're pulling money from some blue states. So did the Democrats just hand the keys to the kingdom to the Republicans?
Well, I think they pulled $18 billion out of Chuck Schumer's district for building infrastructure, and I think that was just a little shot over the bow. So I think that they've been very strategic. They've been really strategic, and they're yelling that this is part of the 2025 plan and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, the Republicans are good at some things. And one of the things that they're good at is we don't stand around yelling and we don't stand around burning down buildings, but we say, wait, just wait.
And what do you mean by wait?
Yeah.
Just wait.
Yeah,
I was looking at Bill's face. I thought Bill was going to ask that question.
I'm kind of curious where you're going with that one. I'm like, and then what?
Well, then we'll take advantage of some of these things that perhaps they didn't think that we would take advantage of.
Like what? And talk to me about that. I mean, they're taking advantage of. So the idea that what we're going to do during the government shutdown is start pulling funding from blue states, doesn't that just prove what the Democrats are saying, that the Republicans are doing this just to be mean? They're just trying to hurt Democrats. They're just trying to hurt constituencies. They're being politics with this.
I don't think they're going to target the blue states.
I do. I hope they do. I 100% hope they do.
Trump
are you kidding me?
I think there's things out of the administration that have said they are.
I don't think Trump cares at all. He's like, how much can I make Chucky Schumer hurt? Let's go.
Well, one of the things they talk about is how they can't enroll any more people in the WIC program. And as far as I know, the WIC program is across the United States. I don't think that there's more WIC people in blue states than there are in red states. So I don't think it is exactly targeted that direction. And I think that they're going to take a good look at what is essential and what isn't essential and do some saying like, well, government is bloated. I don't know anybody who doesn't agree with that statement.
And Joan, look.
I got a question about that, though.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Question I've got about that, though, is that since we are at a government shutdown, how does this qualify as a reason for these individuals to lose their job? What I'm curious about is we have determined that because the government, the people that are in Congress, haven't done their job, we're now going to determine other individuals in the federal government are extraneous and unnecessary. I can't figure out how, because the funding has received a hiccup up top, that then creates downstream permission to fire people. I can't get around that.
You have this opportunity with this law. Now, you could disagree that they're not reading this law correctly, but they're going to seize this opportunity. And
But what
Bill,
law? Tell me into the
Anti Deficiency Act.
Yeah, but how does it say you get to fire people when we're in a government shutdown? Walk me through that one again, because I don't see it and I don't hear it.
I'm not an expert on the law, but Russell Vought and Donald Trump believe they can. Now, this will be litigated out, but what the Democrats walked into, and this is why this is a big problem for them, is that this was a clean continuation resolution with regards to spending, right? There's no added, no take it. We're just going to keep going. Democrats said, no, we're going to take this moment to try to drive our agenda to get ACA funding back. Okay?
Which is what the Republicans did during the Biden administration.
Okay, right.
Same thing.
But
I mean, this is
look
just the
at
same
who's
thing.
on the other side of the equation, Mr. Thorpe. Person on the other side of the equation thinks that the federal government is massively bloated. Every time he's tried to reduce the workforce, he ends up in a lawsuit and somebody somewhere within the federal government sues it. Now he's got a little bit more power as a result of this Anti Deficiency Act that says federal agencies are not permitted to spend funds the Government Accountability Office outlines are not necessary for missions related to performing constitutional duties. So it opens itself up now to interpretation.
I disagree with that.
It doesn't matter if you disagree with it.
No,
what happened was the Democrats walked into a situation where the administration's going to go, we're going to seize this. We think the government's too big already. We're going to try to get rid of 100,000 employees through it. And Democrats are sat here going, well, I guess we'll just have to litigate this. But the point being, the guy on the other side of the equation wants the government shut down, wants federal employees reduced, wants federal spending reduced. And now you've just handed him the ability to at least do it.
I don't think he
for
can.
a meantime.
I don't think he can.
It doesn't matter.
No, it
doesn't matter.
Wait.
You can think he doesn't want it all day.
No, it's not about. What, Joan?
It's for 7 weeks. That's the part that's just truly wild, is they're fighting this, and it was only 7 weeks. You know, it's like I wouldn't give anybody. It's like a kid throwing a tantrum before they go to bed because they want to stay up 15 more minutes, and they're gonna do this and they're gonna do that. It's just a 7-week CR, and we have passed CRs since the 70s.
I know, Joan, but here's the thing. I remember under the Biden administration, I remember Democrats coming out and saying the exact same thing that Jeff just did. We've got a clean CR. Why won't the Republicans vote for the clean CR to keep the government open? And the Republicans going, we got to have this. All we're doing is we're just changing the nouns. The behavior is the exact same. And the thing is that I can't figure out is why, when Congress does not continue funding, that then gives the president the ability to fire people because the other appropriations laws are still in effect. The other appropriations laws about where things are supposed to be spent and how things are supposed to be funded are still in effect. It doesn't violate those laws.
You can make that argument's going to be made in court. But the problem with the analysis that you just had there is that Democrats, when they were on the flip side of this, wouldn't have used the Anti Deficiency Act to try to reduce the size of the federal government.
It's probably
Republicans
not legal.
will.
It's probably not legal. Everything that I'm seeing about doesn't look like it's legal at all to do this.
All right.
Hey,
but
son,
you got a guy that's willing to try it, and that changes the equation here. Go ahead, Joan.
The Democrats don't follow the rules anyway. We make all these rules, and then we have a constitution, and regularly Polis violates it with his laws. And the part that's truly funny is then they don't even follow their laws. So I think we've become much more lawless in America. And the other day I was complaining to the Lakewood police about a person that we have that's a habitual spitter and such. And they were like, well, there isn't anything we can really do. Our hands are tied. There really isn't anything we can do. And I was like, you know what? The next time the Democrats come out and say, defund the police, I'm there. I will defund the police. Thank you very much.
Joan, Lakewood, appreciate the call. Thanks so much. Her phone line will be open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. We'll continue the debate as it rages in Washington, D.C. Government shutdown, day 2. Who do you blame? Doesn't seem like either side's all that concerned too much, but I think the Republicans got the Democrats on the ropes. What do you think? 303-696-1971. Text us at 720-819-5115. I want to talk to you real quick about Dan Caplis and Dan Caplis Law. Dan delivering 40 years of justice for people that have been hurt in injury cases here in Colorado. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado state history. Dan delivering a $200 million victory for that family who lost their little girl up at the Glenwood Springs Adventure Caverns, because what he was able to discover during this 3-week trial is that the theme park had a official policy to bypass safety concerns. This was not public. This was not known. He discovered it, delivered this big victory for this family, and he has improved the lives of all of us here in the state, because now these theme parks are going to be taking safety a lot more seriously. That's what Dan Caplis does. So if you're hurt in an injury case, you got to call Dan Caplis. Dan Caplis Law, the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law, serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplislaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking the Anti Deficiency Act. And you may be going, well, what the heck are you guys talking about that? Well, the Trump administration, and particularly Russell Vought, are looking at that as a gateway towards what's called a reduction in force. And this provides some leniency, not total, but some leniency for the executive agency to reduce funding when there is a restriction in funding that comes from a government shutdown. So can they use this to reduce the number of federal employees? Well, the Trump administration is saying, yes, up to the tune of maybe 100,000. We might finally get the federal government reduction we've been looking for. And of course, Democrats and others saying, no, you don't have the power to do this. It's going to be litigated. But the point being, in this case, while you've had other shutdowns take place in the past, you got a president who wants this and is willing to push it. And so have the Democrats made a mistake. Let's go to the phone lines. Gary, Denver. Good morning, Gary. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm a federal employee getting ready to go to work. And this is just the most recent example of MAGAs like Jeff basically agreeing with whatever Trump or his administration do and try to use reverse logic to come up with an explanation like the law you're referencing. You can't even explain the logic behind how that applies, and yet you're defending it. And to me, that just holds no weight at all. But all you need to do is have an AI app, and you can do an awful lot of research very quickly. And let me explain that the OMB cannot simply do mass firings without following RIF procedures. And RIF procedures, one, you need to give employees 60 days notice, and then you need to go through a process of what's called bumping, where people can, based on experience, et cetera, can change jobs. So this is just a lot of bluster by Russell Vought, but, Democrats will get in their corner, Republicans will get in their corner, but what they're forgetting, people who are independents like me are sitting back and saying, both sides are just being unreasonable, and this isn't going to accomplish anything.
Tell me what you think the way forward is. If both sides are being unreasonable, what should the negotiation be to get the government back open?
Well, eventually they're going to have to get together. The Democrats seem to be saying they're willing to extend the CR until the end of October, and the Republicans want to extend it to November 17th. So I'm guessing eventually, if it's resolved quickly, I think the Democrats will agree to the extension. And if it goes on much longer than that, then it's going to look bad for the Republicans, and they'll agree to the extension.
It seems like there's a reasonable way forward on this. Now, with regards to the Anti Deficiency Act, it does provide for a reduction in force, doesn't it?
Well, if you're arguing that, please explain in detail how that works.
Why?
Because you're saying that could be used, so you should understand it in order to use that as in your argument. Explain the Anti Deficiency Act and how that gives them the power. Let's think of it this way. Let's just use some basic logic. Furloughed employees are not paid. I think everyone knows that. They don't get paid until the budget's passed, and then they get back pay. So to use the logic that you can't use funds that aren't available makes no sense, because furloughed employees aren't getting paid. So please explain.
I don't understand your point. That under the law, they're allowed to have a reduction in force, right?
Yes, but what the Republicans are saying is that we don't have the money, so we're going to fire them because we don't have the money to pay, but they're not getting paid when they're on furlough.
And so your argument is they don't have the power to do the firing.
I'm saying they need, whether there's a government shutdown or not, they're required to follow RIF procedures. They can't just fire people next week. They need to follow a process. The first part of that process is you prepare a reorganization plan. You give you put employees in what's called competitive areas. Then you give all the employees 60 days notice. And all of this is, just the 60 days notice will take us into December.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying about how because Congress is on a shutdown and the funding isn't going, that is not, in many cases, rise to the level of what RIF allows you to do, because the funding for the program hasn't been discontinued. The program hasn't been discontinued. The jobs haven't been discontinued. None of those things have happened. It is a congressional action that hasn't continued the monetary stream. And from my reading of the Anti Deficiency Act, that does not allow massive firings under that reading as far as the constraints it puts on them.
And guys, I keep going back to, okay, well, I'm glad that your legal analysis of this lends that argument. But the bottom line being, you have a president and a head of OMB that's going to push this in an effort to reduce the size of the federal government. So in this battle with Democrats, are the Democrats at a disadvantage?
There you go again, Jeff. You just accept whatever Trump and this Russell Vogt dude says, and you don't understand the anti-deficiency.
Gary, I don't care. Look, Gary, it doesn't matter if I accept it or what you accept or what Bill accepts. All right? What matters is that you have a Democrat Party that had a clean CR, could have done that, could have pushed that through, decided to try to use some leverage, and the guy on the other side of the table is going to push the Anti Deficiency Act in an effort to reduce the size of the federal government. And you go, well, he can't do it. It doesn't matter, Gary, if you don't think he can do it or not. He's going to push it, and you may see 100,000 federal employees lose their jobs. And this could have been avoided, Gary, this could have been avoided with the Democrats embracing a clean CR. Republicans didn't ask for them to do anything crazy. Just continue.
Good attempt to change the subject and conflate two issues. You just don't understand the Anti-Deficiency Act, and this is just a pattern of yours where you don't bring the facts or data. Billy does that, but you don't.
All right, Gary, I'm going to ask you again because I think I'm on the third time asking you this question. Okay? 100,000 federal employees could still have their jobs if the Democrats embraced the clean CR. Do you hold them responsible at all for this problem?
Well, if you believe what Vogt said is if they agree to the CR, they won't proceed with a RIF, then yes, I would agree with you. I have no idea where you're getting 100,000.
Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's a number that Donald Trump has thrown out there. Yeah, and thanks for the phone call, Gary. Appreciate it. We've got to run to a break. But Jeff, what you've just outlined there is what we were talking about earlier in the show, which is holding federal employees hostage to achieve a political goal. I'm not certain long term that's going to work, because that's what you were doing. You're saying the Democrats better do this clean CR or the workers are going to get it. Not certain that's going to be a strong message, but we'll see if the Democrats are clever enough to point it out.
Because, Bill, I'll go back to the way I started at the very beginning. What conservatives want is a small, reduced federal government that doesn't do all of this unnecessary stuff. I'm sorry, 88% of the EPA is considered non-essential, but 88% of the EPA is non-essential. Conservatives have always argued for a limited federal government. Every time we've tried to do it, it's lawsuit this, lawsuit that. You can't do that. Listening to Gary try to explain how to fire a federal employee makes all of the arguments on our side. It's impossible to fire these people.
Well, here's the thing, Bill.
Hold on, I'm not done.
Who's in charge
Bill,
of laws?
I am not done. In this battle, what Democrats have handed Republicans is an opportunity to achieve what they've wanted to achieve for a long time. And the arguments on the other side are, well, gosh, this might not be a good look. What about all those other federal employees? How are we going to treat all those federal employees? On purely the arguments with regards to who has the power in this negotiation, Democrats are handing Republicans what they've wanted all along.
Yet you're assuming power you've already admitted you don't know exists. Be careful. You don't know if Donald Trump and the administration have this power. We don't know if it does. You've said that
it's going to be litigated. So what? Everything else Donald Trump does is litigated.
Might be a pattern then.
Democrats litigate. All right, we'll continue.
No. I give you a long list of things that the Republicans have been doing.
Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Bill, do you understand my argument? Because what Gary was trying to get into is Trump can't do this. Legally, Trump can't do this. And I'm like, okay. Well, the courts are going to determine that. We're not lawyers. You're not a lawyer. He's not. Gary's not a lawyer. All right? But there is wiggle room within the Anti Deficiency Act as it relates to reduction in forces. And Trump and Vogt are going to seize that wiggle room. And you guys all day could go, he can't do it, he can't do it. But what I'm pointing out is, in the midst of negotiations, you have a guy that's willing to try to do that. Do you think Democrats took that into consideration in this?
Yes, I do think so. But again, we got to think about that technically is holding federal workers hostage for your politics. Is that a winning message?
Join the Jeff and Bill Show.
KNUS.